Hey, I'm Jason Aaron Wood from the bands Todespondent and Ol Sonoof, and creator of Shredmentor Rock Guitar Academy. And today, on behalf of Guitar Sphere, I'm going to be reviewing the Washburn EC29 and Washburn EC36 guitars. Manufactured for only 2 years in Japan, between 1988 and 1989, there were only about 1,500 of these and about 500 of these. The EC29 features 29 frets, and the EC36 features, you guessed it, 36 frets. The EC in the model name actually refers to extended cutaway, which, with this many frets, you really do need upper fret access. So right from the front, you can really see how much deeper this concave is actually cut away. But what you can't see from the front, and in my opinion, the more important part of the extended cutaway, is actually on the back. This is the Stevens extended cutaway. It basically takes the width of the neck and extends that entire hand's width into the body, and it has an extremely smooth concave into the actual body itself. Instead of suddenly thickening like most guitars do, it's the most comfortable neck joint ever. It really is the most comfortable guitar I have ever felt when it comes to the actual neck joint. So not only are you given upper fret access, but you're given it comfortably, okay? Guitar makers, take note. Both the EC29 and the EC36, both obviously, first of all, most significantly have a surplus of frets. Where most guitars top off at 22 or 24 frets, the EC29 gives you 5 extra frets on a tapered fretboard, so really those extra frets are mostly available on the first and second strings, with fewer and fewer of them available on the lower strings, where you're probably not going to really need them anyway. So this was really designed with the player in mind, because a lot of guitars, which will actually go up that high, still force you to sort of reach over the body, whereas this gives you complete access very comfortably all the way up to the 29th fret. It also is tapered in the front so that it facilitates the kind of angle you might need to be on, and it really gets out of your way. And again, all the way up, you have the thickness of the neck extending all the way up to the 29th fret, which is right about here. All right, so your whole hand fits right in there. It's the most comfortable thing. And this is exactly what the EC36 feels like too. It's exactly the same body profile. If you were to close your eyes and somebody hands you one or the other, you wouldn't even be able to tell which one it is just by holding it like this. As soon as you go up here and notice that the frets keep going, then you might notice it's an EC36, but otherwise they are pretty much identical in terms of the overall body and neck profile. They both have an active humbucker in the bridge, which is essentially a copy of an EMG 81. So it's a very high output active pickup, and like the EMG 81, it also has a push-pull pot so that you can do a coil split. The EC36 only leaves room for one humbucker, and that's it, because you can see how high up the actual fretboard goes. So you really don't have room for anything but this pickup, but you still have a push-pull pot for the volume knob in this case. Both guitars have a volume knob, and this is actually an active mid-range boost, which you'll also see as the bottom knob on this one. The EC29 has room for an extra pickup, so you get a little bit more variety of tone, but we'll get into that in a moment. Both of them also have a floating licensed Floyd Rose tremolo system, one of 2 varieties. The earlier model, I believe, I might be wrong on whether it was the earlier one, but most likely the earlier model would be this one here. This is actually a Washburn 600T model, and up close you'll see that the saddles, they actually are not the block type that crushes the string down and holds it in place, but rather they're on a hinge, and you lock it down with a separate hex key. Okay, so the string actually feeds through here, so you actually have the ball ends in there. You don't have to actually cut them off. Okay, you can actually see I'm using DiMarzios very visibly because of the different colored strings in there, but you can see that the ball ends are actually still intact in the bridge. You actually feed it through, and in this model the saddles themselves clamp down and hold the strings in place instead of having to cut off the ball ends the way you normally would. And of course you have the locking nut at the end as well. Okay, so that's still pretty much standard. One other thing about the 600T model is that the way that the bar attaches, it actually just slides right in. There's no threading on the bar, and there's no coupling like you would find on more modern Floyd Rose bridges, but instead there is actually a small screw right in here that is a hex key screw, and you tighten that in and it actually presses up against the bar inside of the cavity, and that's how you adjust the tightness of the bar. Okay, so that's one variety. This 600T was later replaced with the 600S, which was actually what came with my EC36 when I got it, which was the more modern, like, or at least up to the early 2000s type of model of Floyd Rose, which basically has the blocks inside of here, very much like what I ended up having to put on here. Unfortunately, the bar on the 600S was a screw-in type. This is not it. This is actually something that I actually had to replace it with, because as anyone who's ever had a sort of Fender stock tremolo type of whammy bar knows, when you have the threads on the bar and you have to screw the bar itself into it, one day your bridge is going to strip out. And I got this guitar in 2005, and it had been around that long, so it had already sort of stripped out by the time I got it. So this is actually sort of a really cheap replacement licensed Floyd Rose that actually does have a coupling on it. So this is yet a third type. So this one actually does not have the original tremolo on it because, as I said, it was stripped out when I got it. But otherwise, it's the same idea. The blocks, and instead of feeding the strings into it like on the other model, you would actually use the same size hex key on everything to tighten the blocks onto the string, and then of course the locks from the other end. Okay, so aside from the way that the bar attaches, this is pretty much what the 600S model, which replaced the earlier 600T, featured. Okay, that's pretty much it as far as the features shared by both. Both have inline headstocks, so not reverse. Cosmetically, there's a little bit of variation that both models would see. Mine do not have this, but some of them had the Ibanez Gem style monkey grip right about here on the guitar. It's not that common at all, but it's featured on both models, EC29 and EC36 alike. And most of them actually have a kind of a different type of logo. Instead of just Washburn, it actually says George Washburn. That's one unique thing about these guitars. I don't know why they decided to do that, but that is one thing that you'll find on almost all of them. One variation that you'll also see sometimes is actually an older logo, which I believe is from the earlier models of this. Another logo cosmetic thing about it is some of the pickups actually have the logo on this side, and some of them actually have it on the other side. These are just little tiny cosmetic differences that you'll find. They were all basically given three main kind of families of what kind of finish they got to. Basically an overall single color type of crackle finish with one color of crackle over another. I haven't really seen this one many other places. There's a really common crackle one is a white or cream with black crackle on it. Another one, the more common crackle by the way, is a lava crackle or red magma, I think they actually call it, whereas you have two different kinds of crackle when it goes diagonally across the guitar. So it would be kind of like this on one side, but then it would be red crackle on black on the other side. Kind of like this guitar. I have no idea who owns this one, but anyway. Another family, okay, this would be the third family because you have the single background color crackle, the dual background color crackle, and then you have this really crazy wild 80s in a nutshell kind of finish, which is like one sort of solid color. Hopefully it's translating, but it's sort of a teal in this one with weird wild paint splotches all over it. So there's other variations of which background color and foreground colors you get with each of these finishes. But overall, there's three like main families of what type of finish you'll find from one guitar to the next that they rolled out. There is also some variation in the actual name. They all ended up having the model number of either EC29 or EC36. So there is some variation over time between which model names they get. So one thing you can rely on each time is the model number. EC29 for 29 frets and EC36 for the 36 fret variation. Okay, so that's pretty much it for what they have in common. Now let's get into the particulars of each individual guitar and what makes them different. I will start with the EC29, partially because it's the one I started with, and so everything that I guess my opinion of both is really based more on this one, having come from this one first. I got mine in 1993, and it was actually new, and the shop that had it was just looking to get it off their hands. So I actually got it for $600, which is amazing because the MSRP was $14.99 US dollars. So I got it for less than half the price. Thanks, Mom, because I was a little kid at the time. But I got this in 1993, and right away I could see, even though I was actually on the lookout for a Flying V guitar at the time, as soon as I saw this little section right up here, I knew I was looking at something very special, and I kind of made it a point to mention, oh, I really want that guitar, and ended up getting it. And this actually changed the game for me. I had a really crappy Harmony Strat from a pawn shop before that, and this guitar suddenly coming into my possession showed me how much of my crappy playing at the time was me and how much was just my guitar holding me back. This guitar has amazing action. This right here was a launching pad for me to play really, really well. One thing about this guitar, right away, this was the first one I had with a humbucker. So coming from a 3 single coil Strat copy to this, immediately I was able to achieve levels of distortion I couldn't quite get with the other one, and noiselessly as well. I didn't even know for the longest time what was going on with this push-pull thing. I thought it was broken, but you ultimately have a 3-way switch because you actually do have more than one pickup here. So you have the bridge as a humbucker, you have the bridge as single coil, you have a combination of both as single coil, you have the humbucker and single coil combination, and then you have just the neck pickup. I really don't know what this would be a copy of. Like I said, this is like an EMG 81. I really don't know what this one is. It matches well. It sounds nice. It is a little higher up the string than you would normally have it, so you are going to ultimately pick up some tones at a different location of the string than a lot of neck pickups would give you. Of course, if you're kind of a purist about the 22nd fret being as high as it goes, so you can get your neck pickup here, well, you're not going to get that tone here because that's just not where the pickup is. I'm actually a really big fan of this 600T bridge. The only downside really is that you do need another hex key, which is a very small problem to have. By far, the benefit outweighs the trouble of that because of the amount of time and less headache that you have when restringing a Floyd Rose equipped guitar. So I really like that. This is something that I kind of grew up with, and so having fine tuners is that's just one of the benefits of having a Floyd Rose style bridge. The 29th fret is perfectly accessible, which is another thing that I think I like the EC29 a little bit more than the EC36 for. Despite the obvious extra 7 frets on the other guitar, the tonal variation and also just the full access to every fret on the guitar do sort of make this a little bit more my favorite, because really, this is pretty high. I actually tuned mine down a step and a half, so I'm in a C sharp standard, and even having 29 frets, of course I lose a little of that extra range. I actually gain it on the low end. I still have access, even without bending, up to an F sharp with this tuning. So, and I can still bend however far I'd be, feeling safe to bend. So a step and a half, maybe even 2 whole steps if I'm feeling adventurous on new enough strings. So I still get even extra access with tuning down so that I can play more extreme types of metal. So yeah, you still get more range than you would, even if you tune down, you still get the full range of what you would on a normal 24 fret guitar in E standard. Overall though, I find this to be a really wonderful guitar. I do spend most of my time in the bridge pickup position on this. It just sounds best for what I'm usually doing on it. You can get really heavy tones. Like anything with active pickups, you do kind of have to roll off the volume a little bit if you're trying to get clean sounds, because it's just a really hot pickup. But yeah, very, very comfortable. My only complaint, which would be for both guitars, or no, 2 complaints, would be above the 24th fret, they actually started using smaller fret wire. So the 24th fret is just kind of a standard size fret. I don't think these are not extra jumbo or anything like that. They're just medium. But then they started using very tiny fret wire from the 25th fret and up on both guitars, the 29 and the 36. And that is, it's not a problem, but I would have preferred they use at least fret wire that's as tall. Because what ends up happening is the fret wire itself is just not quite as high up. So right when you have the least margin for error, you actually have to press harder, and that does kind of slow things down. Of course, enough practice with doing anything and you'll get it right, but it's just a little bit of an unneeded hassle that I would have I would have designed it differently, but hey, I'm not a guitar builder, I'm a player. So from a player's point of view, it's still pretty kick-ass. It just really needs, it would have been better if those frets were just a little bit higher. That would be pretty much the only complaint I have, aside from the recessed jack. If you don't have a problem with recessed jacks, you won't have a problem with that. It actually came with Dunlop strap locks already installed on it, so that was pretty handy as well, because you don't really want a guitar like this, as rare as this and as awesome as this, to fall to the floor unnecessarily either. So it was already built in mind, you know, not dropping it on the floor. So that's it's just a great guitar overall. And really, 29 frets, I guess maybe it's because I just grew up playing on this guitar, but really 29 frets, or 31 if you do a whole step bend, it's pretty much all you need for extended range. It's especially well suited to extending sweep arpeggios a little further, like one extra chord tone up. So if you're doing like you can actually reach with the pinky rather easily quite a number of frets. So it's actually really nice for that. Let's get into a little stuff on the EC36, because to elaborate on that point, this guitar, although it doesn't have the tonal variety that you can get with the extra pickup and the pickup selector switch, this guitar, the advantage is actually having all that extra range. Although it's not as easy, I can actually reach with the angle. Because it's carved away a little bit right here in the front, it actually allows me to reach with a little extra effort all the way to the 33rd fret. I still have to kind of reach up over awkwardly to get all the way to the 36th. So that would be a little bit of a complaint on the EC36. But considering that with the right angle, I could have my first finger at 24 and actually reach all the way up to 33 without much trouble, really. I can actually play like full arpeggios on a single string, 4 fingers, with this guitar. So it's actually not so bad that you don't exactly cut off right here at 29, but like I said, it's the same exact body profile. Bam, you're at 29 either way, whether you're playing an EC36 or an EC29. Could be a complaint, but it's not really that big a deal, because really most of the notes you need, you're not going to be up here all the time. Just like with an 8-string, when you get extra lower range, it doesn't mean you have to just play the lower range that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Just the same. You don't need to only play up here just because suddenly you have it. So for me, having the extra range is just like having an 88-key keyboard instead of a 25-key keyboard. I'm still going to spend much of my time in the guitar range of low E up to about 24. But if I need those extra notes, especially when doing dual harmonies with shredding solos and stuff like that, it allows you to get those upper harmonies and really, really soar high in the range if you want to. So what's really nice, especially for that, is this is very well suited if you're going to do any kind of like neoclassical type stuff, especially if you're going to take music written for something like a violin, which is in a much higher range than a guitar. It'll allow you to access a good portion of that kind of stuff. So if you're looking to work out classical violin parts on the guitar, this is actually very, very well suited to that. And one thing that's really, it's common between both guitars, but it's especially useful on the EC36, is that when you go to do pinch harmonics, you can actually see exactly which fret you should be over top of for your thumb or forefinger to strike the string, so that you can get exactly where, you know, the right pinch harmonic that you want. So it kind of takes the guesswork out of exactly where you should pick, and it's actually good as a training tool, really. Actually, I usually teach harmonics on this guitar because it's actually, you can see exactly where your finger along the string should actually hit the string. So by having all these extra frets, even if you're not going to actually play the notes at their frets, you can actually basically hit any pinch harmonic you want just by going to the equivalent of that fret in the next octave. So just as you could do this with the 7th fret, you can go another octave higher at the 31st fret. Okay, so it's also great for doing your pinch harmonics and really getting a hang of roughly where your pinch harmonics would be along the string above the 24th fret. So even if you're going to go back to another guitar that doesn't have such a surplus of strings, or just 22 or 24, it's actually really good practice for sort of being able to eyeball how far above that fret, where would the 25th fret be. So having some experience with this really takes a lot of the guesswork out of that. Now, of course, without an actual visible fretboard above the 24th fret on any normal guitar, you would instead need to sort of memorize the specific location on that guitar. So using whatever visual guide you have, maybe the edge of the neck pickup or the center of the neck pickup or wherever that harmonic might happen to be along the string. So visual guides on your guitar might vary because most guitars just don't have 36 frets. But this is really good for teaching you that kind of thing too. Overall, since I actually used the bridge pickup on both guitars, really I like this one just as much. It's just as comfortable. It's just really about how much tonal variety I need. And since I personally am a really big fan of Floyd Rose bridges, thanks to growing up playing this, I've actually kind of gotten in the habit of just keeping them in different tunings. In either case, just by tuning them down any number of frets, I still end up getting a much wider range. So this is sort of my go-to for any neoclassical type of thing, especially if I'm going to do harmonies. So Guitar 2 and a lot of my recordings ends up featuring this guitar because I can get as high up as I want and I can pretty much hit the frets pretty easily. Once you're into that smaller fret range, you kind of get used to it. It actually feels quite a bit like a mandolin. If you've ever played one of them, it's sort of like little mandolin frets on it. So it feels very much like the upper range of a mandolin. That's kind of it, really. They're both really fantastic guitars. They have both actually kind of maintained a pretty high street value. The original MSRP was $1,499 US dollars, and that's kind of on average what they still sell for. Since they're both discontinued for nearly 30 years now, you're only really going to find them on eBay or for sale through some third party, but they're definitely still well sought after, and they still on average sell for about $1,500. That said, I have seen them sell for as little as $250, which is a real steal, and I've seen ones in mint condition sell for as much as $2,500. So there is still quite a range. Most of the time you're going to see it sell for $800 or more though. So, save up your pennies. It's going to be, it's going to cost you, but this is a fantastic guitar, and on average you're getting basically about a $1,500 to $2,000 guitar quality out of this kind of thing. So this is definitely a nice kind of collector edition. These are both guitars that I do not ever plan to have leave my possession. They're pretty much keepers for life because they're, and really the original specs are fantastic. So I mean, a lot of the ones that you'll find are going to have a variety of things modded and upgraded and stuff, and every one of these really has a story, which is kind of why they're sort of so fascinating. There's not a whole lot of information left out there because it's been quite a while, and these have largely fallen off the radar for a lot of people. So a lot of people don't even know they exist anymore. They're not being manufactured anymore, although Washburn has brought back sort of an attempt to reincarnate them. I don't know. I haven't tried those. I can't speak for them personally. But the ones from 88 and 89 are really fantastic, and if you have the money and you're really into shred and stuff like that, these guitars were made for you. Since there's not a lot of information left on these, since they've kind of been off the radar for a lot of guitarists for so long, I've actually also created a fan page on Facebook for these guitars specifically. So if you're looking to be notified when one of them pops up on eBay, you can just hop over to Facebook. But basically, I'd run this page to help bring people together with these guitars, help them find a new home for people that don't want them anymore, and get them into the hands of people who do want to add this to their arsenal, because it's a really awesome thing for pretty much anybody that likes metal or shred or hard rock or wants to solo, because this is obviously a soloing guitar. Something this old is bound to have a couple of dings on it most of the time, and if it doesn't, expect to pay about $2,500 for that, because people who have these generally know their value. You can tell right away when you get this guitar in your hands that you're playing something very special. And hopefully you don't get too spoiled with that neck joint, because no matter how comfortable a neck joint you find on any other guitar, it's just not going to compare to this. So I'm a little spoiled having had these most of my guitar playing life, but it's a pretty good thing to have. It's a good problem to have, So that's it for this time. Again, I'm Jason Aaron Wood with the bands Toe Despondent and Ol Sonoof, and with Shredmentor Rock Guitar Academy, and this has been a Guitar Sphere exclusive review.